All right, it is September 24th, 2023, and here in about an hour I'm going to be doing a podcast from this location. And I've got my camp set up, got the fire going to try to get rid of the mosquitoes as they start biting here in a little bit. But before I get started, I wanted to take a minute and share an old historical Bigfoot account with you guys. Actually, a couple of them as recorded by a gentleman named J.W. Burns, who was a government Indian agent / teacher on the Chehalis Indian Reserve in British Columbia. And this would have been around 100 years ago. This is way back. And he said this, I want to share this. I really like the old historical accounts, by the way, because that we can look at them, especially up there in the Pacific Northwest, and kind of get an idea about how the Sasquatch was viewed historically and compare it to what people are reporting today. So anyway, back to this. This gentleman said, before setting forth Mr. Burns' narrative, I should like to make it clear that he not only holds a highly responsible government position as an Indian agent, but is keenly interested in the subject of the hairy giants, which he has studied for a number of years. He is confident that his charges are perfectly sincere in their beliefs. They are not in contact with tourists and have no reason whatever to cook up fables for the benefit of the unsophisticated. And he says, I am convinced, said Mr. Burns, that survivors of the Sasquatch do still inhabit the inaccessible interior of British Columbia. And only by sheer luck, however, is a white man likely to sight one of them, because like wild animals, they instinctively avoid all contact with civilization in that rocky country. It is impossible to track them down. I still live in hope, however, of someday surprising a Sasquatch, and when that happens, I trust to have a camera handy. And now for my story, end quote. So yeah, we would all feel very lucky if we had a camera handy and surprised one of these creatures. A few people have in the past. Unfortunately, very few clear pictures of what we would call a Sasquatch, but there have been a few. He said, and here I'm quoting his story, he said, utterly terrified, the Indian raced madly toward the Chehalis River where his dugout canoe was moored. In pursuit lunged a hairy giant of a man, at least 8 feet tall and broad in proportion. He was stark naked and covered from head to toe by a thick growth of black woolly hair. In his fright, the Chehalis Indian, Peter Williams, completely forgot the rifle he clutched. He did not attempt to stop and fight it out. When he suddenly caught sight of the monster standing on the summit of a huge boulder, all reason fled, to be instantly supplanted by sheer panic as the giant growled and sprang toward him. Heedless of the tangled undergrowth, he plunged wildly on, occasionally jerking his head around to gaze affrightedly at the horror behind. Reaching the riverside, he gave a frantic heave, and the dugout canoe shot out in the turbulent stream. The water, however, did not daunt the giant, for he plunged forward in hot pursuit. The instant the bow of the dugout scraped the opposite bank, Peter Williams leaped ashore. The giant was now almost in midstream, swimming strongly. Once more, he took to his heels, well nigh dazed from exhaustion. He finally reached the frame shack that was his home. Frenziedly, he herded his wife and children inside, bolted the door, and barricaded it with every article he could lay hands on. Then, with his rifle at the ready, he tremblingly awaited the giant's arrival. Presently, there came the sound of a heavy body forcing its way through the brush. Darkness had not yet set, and peering through a crack, Peter Williams took a good look at the monster. It was undoubtedly a Sasquatch, one of the well-nigh fabulous hairy giants which, according to Indian belief, still inhabit the unexplored wilds of the interior British Columbia. Growling deep-chestedly, the huge figure made a circle of the hut. Then, putting one shoulder against a wall, he pushed with such tremendous force that the flimsy dwelling shook. The timbers creaked and groaned so loudly under the strain that the Indian feared the roof would collapse, and whispered to his wife and children to crawl under the bed. They promptly obeyed, leaving their, quote, terrified lord and master to face the monster alone. But to Peter's vast relief, however, the Sasquatch failed to force an entry. After prowling gruntingly around the house for several minutes, he stalked away into the bush. Next morning, he found the giant's tracks in the mud outside the shack, and he says the footprints measured 22 inches in length. And if that is an accurate account of how long those footprints were, I can't even imagine how the size of the creature that left them would be. The foregoing is a condensed account of what Peter Williams later told me took place. I've known him for a good many years. He is intelligent, honest, and trustworthy. Speaking personally, I do not question the truth of his story, for it is only one of many reports concerning the mysterious Sasquatch or wild giants that I have heard firsthand from Indians under my official care. The incident happened, moreover, in my own district, the Saskahwa, if I'm pronouncing that right, probably not. In my own district, the Saskahwa, forgive me if I'm butchering that, but I don't know exactly how it's pronounced, area of British Columbia. The word Saskahwa means place of the wild man. And he says, before proceeding to relate further incidents connected with the mysterious Sasquatch, I ought to explain that for the past 15 years, I have occupied a government position as an Indian agent stationed at the Chehalis Indian Reserve, some 60-odd miles from Vancouver, British Columbia. My charges are also my friends, and because I have always reciprocated their regard, endeavoring to help them in every way possible, the Chehalis Indians gradually took me into their confidence and eventually told me all they knew about the Sasquatch, a subject never previously discussed with any white man. Being naturally of a proud and somewhat aloof nature, they are extremely sensitive to ridicule and so avoid all mention of a topic which experience had shown merely exposed them to derision. If a white stranger inquires about the Sasquatch, he is invariably met with the guarded reply, no, the white man will not believe, and he just makes a joke of the Indians. Although I have never personally encountered a Sasquatch, there is ample proof that hairy giants formerly inhabited the Chehalis district in considerable numbers. Its ancient name, a place of the wild man, was until recently accepted as an echo of primitive superstitions, but the accidental discovery a few years ago of two crude cave dwellings confirmed the Indian legend that the later troglodytic period of this region was the abode of human beings of huge stature, survivors of this prehistoric race, the Indians believe, still lurk in the interior fastness. Indian legend tells of two tribes. Now here's one that I have not heard before, and I find this very interesting. I find all of it very interesting, but this especially. It says, Indian legend tells of two tribes of Sasquatches who dwelt in this section of the country. They were deadly enemies and practically exterminated one another, fighting hand to hand with war clubs on the mountainsides. Skeptics may laugh at the idea of primitive man in the shape of 8-foot giants still living in British Dominion, but nevertheless I've collected a good deal of evidence tending to prove that the Sasquatch may not be extinct. The Indians are by no means unintelligent, nor are they prone to imaginative lying when a keen-witted young woman, such as Emma Paul, declares that she saw one of the hairy giants close to her home one evening last summer. I feel convinced she is telling the truth, and here's her story. This lady said, I saw the Sasquatch a few yards from the house. I was standing by the door at the time. He was watching me closely, and I had a good look at his face. He was very big and powerful in appearance. Other members of my family were present, and they saw him. We went inside and bolted the door, but he prowled around the house for some time. Since then, we have often heard the wild men. One of them used to rub his fingers over the window panes. Only a few nights ago, a Sasquatch tramped loudly around the house. All of us heard him, and so did the white carpenter who lives next door. Said the Indians stoutly maintained that each summer the remnants of the Sasquatch hold a sacred gathering near the summit of Morris Mountain, which commands a wide view of the vast solitudes all around. Prior to this rendezvous, the giant sends out scouts to make certain the area is clear. It is these scattered investigators that the Indians believe that individual people have encountered. So hope you enjoyed that. That's a couple of really old encounters by J.W. Burns, who was a teacher in the Chehalis reservation back 100 years ago or better. So, but it is interesting that the natives up there did not look at the Sasquatch as apes or anything like that. They looked at them as another tribe of people, albeit a very huge and hairy tribe of folks. And according to Mr. Burns there, was not even questionable as far as their reality. They accepted it as a living denizens of the forest there. And I especially thought it was interesting that there were reportedly there 2 tribes of Sasquatch that fought against each other up there in the mountains. So if that was true, then at one time there were many more of them than there are now. But anyway, think of that what you will. But I thought I would share that with you guys, and I hope you enjoyed it. And it inspires you to look a little further into it. So now it's getting close to time to start my podcast, so I'm going to build the fire up, get my other camera ready, and do that. So until next time, thanks for watching, and you guys take care.